Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom to the next generation of athletes, coaches, and parents to transform leaders on and off the court. And I'm your host, Coach Furtado. So today's edition of Coach's Corner, which is our Friday edition of the show, if you are new here, where I share what parents are asking me, what coaches are asking me, what athletes are asking me, and also what I am learning from the week. And this is a really important topic, and I would argue that it's one of the most important life principles across all life principles, and that is taking responsibility. And before we dive into that, I kind of want to share, my perspective on taking responsibility, because everyone kind of has something different that they think when they think about responsibility. So when I think about responsibility, I'm kind of tying this into ownership and kind of having no excuses. And this is something that's kind of been interesting. Once I started talking about this more, I started recognizing where I'm making excuses, because we all make excuses in life unless, we are all, abiding by the no complaining rule. But I think taking responsibility for everything, all the energy that you put in for, what's happening in your life. There's a lot of things that are out of our control, right? And we can blame others and we can blame circumstances. And I'm not talking about traumatic circumstances. I'm not talking about, kind of like social issues in terms of race and gender, and that's not what I'm talking about specifically when it comes to responsibility for me in this episode is really what our actions what we do with our daily actions that consistently lead to the results that we have right now. So like for me, I had a conversation with someone the other day about, growing Bridging Impact Basketball. And, I feel very confident in my ability to coach, even my ability to run an organization. And the thing that kept coming up time and time again that was blocking my ability to, grow Bridging Impact Basketball is the ability to find a gym, somewhere to run programs out of, that's at a reasonable cost that, won't break the bank. And so, for a couple months, I've kind of just, been like, okay, I'm just going to focus on parks right now. And that's where it is. But I think recognizing that if there's going to be real, growth, and because I really believe in what we're doing with Bridging Impact Basketball, and that there's no other youth basketball brands doing what we're doing, especially in the Los Angeles area, I have to, put in the time, the persistence, and take the responsibility to look and find a gym, not for myself, but for the kids, because the kids are going to be transformed by these experiences, right? That's my responsibility. It's not the responsibility of anyone else to find Bridging Impact Basketball. It's not a gym. It's not the responsibility of gyms to reach out to me, right? There's so many other organizations that would love to have that gym space. So I have to put in the persistence and the time to, go after that. And so responsibility is just taking ownership of your life, taking ownership of the decisions, right? There's so many things in life that we cannot control, but you are responsible about so much, right? And you're responsible for, what you do on a daily basis, right? Obviously there are bills to pay. That's out of our control. But how do we pay those bills? What do we choose to do? What skill sets do we seek to do? What do we delay our gratification, or are we spending all of our money right now and not saving? That's it, our responsibility. Are we saving, $2 a day, $3 a day, right? Those different responsibility tools. So going into that, I want to share a couple stories, one about on the basketball court and then another one off the basketball court. And I actually will start the off the basketball court one, because it's a conversation I had with a parent literally just yesterday about responsibility. And, she was talking about, hey, my kid is kind of going through it, right? And when you're a teenager, especially when you're talking to your parents, like I remember this, right? That's probably one of the benefits of being a young coach. I still remember all of my experiences of being a teenager, like literally just like it was yesterday, because it wasn't that long ago. Just making up excuses, right? Like, mom, I did this because of him, like peer pressure. And, it started as like they were supposed to meet me somewhere, specific that we'd been meeting, and he, told his mom, he's like, I heard we were going to get picked over here, and, not taking the responsibility to be like, hey, I'm supposed to be picked up over there. And so, it's really simple, and it's kind of a opportunity to be like, hey, right? And I had a conversation with them. I was like, whose responsibility is it to know where they're getting picked up, right? And I'm like, it's my responsibility to communicate with you one time, right? I am not going to be here and try and walk you through it. I do believe in over communication, right? But you can't, like, one of the things that I've been learning is you can't pamper kids, you can't hold their hands through it. They have to take some responsibility to figure things out on their own, because that's how it is when they graduate and they have to go, and go to a job, and you have a boss, a supervisor who's not communicating with them. They have to be able to speak up for themselves. And then I had another time where, I said, hey, you got to be on the court by 4:10. Right, they're walking on the court at 4:13, and we had got to the park around 4:02. They're eating, they're changing, and I'm like, hey, if you need another 5 minutes, it is your responsibility to communicate that with me. Like, hey, coach, can we get till 4:15? And so just starting to really get them to think about, like, it's their responsibility to communicate that. It's their responsibility, to take those actions and really get them. And if it's not hitting right now, right, that's planting a seed that hopefully eventually they understand that it is their responsibility. And then I want to share the on the court, experience, and really on the court, I have this player who I probably shared this story before. So I cut him from, the main team, right? He was on the practice team, but you have to at least be on the practice team, and he was busting some butt at practice, just busting butt, playing great defense, great energy, flying around the floor, and I just kind of was like, whoa. So I put him in the game, just one time, a little bit earlier than I normally would, and he did really well, played great defense. And so, he took responsibility of, he could have complained, because you don't know how many times I hear, whether it's on my team or other teams, like, oh, I'm so much better than that kid. Oh my God, I should be playing more, right? Not taking responsibility for their actions in practice, not taking responsibility to talk to coach and ask about how they can get more playing time, just complaining. And, this player, no excuses, no complaints, just busted his butt. And you know what? He ended up, carving out like a solid role. I'm not going to sit here and say he was the hero on our team, but he was a great, really important part of the team, where he got to play every single game and got to play important minutes in every single game and contributed and impacted the game every single game. And that is because of his work ethic and having no excuses, taking responsibility. And so when you are, whether you're an athlete listening to this or you're a parent or coach, like, ask your athletes like a couple of these different discussion questions, because it's to start getting them to think. Like, I'm big on, questions and pulling it out. Like, there's a point for lecture and teaching and coaching, but there's also a point for helping them understand some of the teaching points that you want to come across. And I think the number one is, like, what is the excuse you make the most? Because, kind of gets them to think about, oh, okay, I again, kind of using the playtime, I blame, X and so for my playtime, right? And okay, if you blame, player X for your playing time, how can you start taking more responsibility for that playing time? All right. And another good one is, you know, are you responsible for the actions you take when you are with a friend group? This is a really important one for my teenage guys, because, like I said earlier in the episode, not that long ago, I was in college and then high school, and, doing dumb things, stupid things. And so just getting them to understand, hey, are you going to be responsible for your actions that you take with your friends when you're all doing dumb things and peer pressured? And so trying to get them to think about that and think about the consequences of their actions, right? Especially for athletes, right? If you get caught doing something that you should not be doing, that's on the player code of conduct, will you be able to play next season? And hey, guess what? You only get high school once, right? In high school sports, there's nothing quite like it, because it's casual, you're playing with your friends. And if you have the privilege of playing in college, college is different, right? It is not the same thing. It is more of a job, right? High school is more playing for the love of the game. And that the college episode, that's a whole nother episode. But just getting them to recognize that they have to be responsible for those decisions. And, hey, if you took no excuses, if you took full responsibility for trying to reach your, whether it's basketball ambitions or your college ambitions, what do you think is possible? Because it's amazing to see what happens when you still really start to take full ownership, full control. You are the author of your story. You are the author of what you control. Right? You cannot control where you live and how long it takes to commute to school, right? That's out of your control. All right, what can you control? Okay, I got a long commute to school. I'm going to watch some basketball, highlights. I'm going to watch some basketball games and study the game, right? Like just taking advantage of, finding ways. And I think one of the things that is actually beneficial is when, you have some of those constrictions, right? Like you don't have all this free time. So like, it's like, what do I do? Right? Seek out a coach, right? Whether it's myself, there's plenty of other fantastic coaches out there that'll be like, hey, maybe think about doing this, reach out to your varsity coach. What do they want you to do? So all in all, I really want to empower players to take responsibility and ownership for themselves to make themselves better people, better athletes, and better leaders. So, as always, if you got something out of this episode, please share it with a friend. That's how we grow this message of transforming leaders on and off the court. And I will be posting episodes. I interview episodes every Wednesday and Friday. Wednesdays is interview episodes, Fridays Coach's Corner, where I share. And there may be some coming weeks actually where, potentially I may be off for a week just because of what we're building here with Bridging Impact Basketball. But I'm going to go do my best to just continue to provide as much value on how we can develop leaders as we can. So make sure to go give it a review on Apple Podcasts, go follow it on Spotify and Apple, so you make sure you stay up to date. And then I will be in your ears and eyes next week. All right, Coach Furtado out. Have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend, wonderful evening.